listening to the Born Primitive Podcast. All right. Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to the Born Primitive Podcast. I am without my co-host, Big Tony. He is on dad duty, just had his second child. So I'm running this one solo. Really excited for today's guest. This was a long time coming. We have been, kind of aligning our schedules, and we finally got this one booked. But for all the CrossFit nerds like me out there, I think you're going to particularly like this guest. 10 times CrossFit Games champion. 4 of those were in the individual. I call him the MJ of CrossFit. And he is the founder of CrossFit Mayhem and Mayhem Athlete out of Cookeville, Tennessee. And also has become quite a successful businessman in other endeavors, including Froning Farms, which is 100% natural, 100% American-made bison snacks. But perhaps most importantly, on his bio, I would say he's a man of God and a family man. So without further ado, super stoked, Rich Froning, welcome to the Born Primitive Podcast.
Yeah, appreciate you having me. Like we said kind of off before, I think that last line is the most important one to me for sure.
Yeah, and it's been cool for, Rich and I were talking before we hit record here, but seeing guys like you, Rich, that were in the spotlight, and you still are, you walk around, people are still going to stop and probably want to take a picture with Rich Froning. But since kind of your moment in the spotlight as a CrossFit Games individual and of course team, it's cool to see guys like you continue to excel outside of the arena. And I would say, Jason Khalipa is another cool example of, it's mostly what I see through Instagram and just the content putting out. But with your business endeavors, it seems like you have a wildly successful affiliate. You've expanded into programming, which I would imagine is probably a pretty good source of income. You have the credibility coming from you as the GOAT of knowing how to program. And I'm sure you have coaches that are assisting in it, of course. And then you go, launch the Froning Farms thing, man. So it's like, what can't you do? And I guess first question is walk us through kind of those other business endeavors and how you got into it. Obviously the affiliate was kind of implied. I mean, that was kind of happening as you were a CrossFit athlete, but to then get into programming and then this wild idea of Froning Farms and even your all's gear, man. We run an apparel company, of course, but I see your all's gear online and you guys do really well, the Prey shirts and things like that, Into the Storm, that's all really good shit. So as a fellow entrepreneur, I have mad respect for what you've done outside the arena.
Yeah, man. If it really comes back to the people we have around here and the kind of the people that we picked up along the way and who've kind of joined the team, I have a sport background, team sports background, played baseball, played football growing up. And really that's what it comes down to. I couldn't do it by myself, even as an individual athlete, it was still a group of people that I was training with on a regular basis. I'd have different guys and girls come in at different times, so pushing me in different areas. So, man, I really look back to it with my kids now. I'm like, hey, let's play some team sports because I see such a benefit in it, and it transfers into everything in life. Obviously schooling and education is huge, but man, right along with it is being able to deal with people, how to motivate different people, how different people handle different things. Sports are huge. And so with Mayhem, like you said, it was kind of a basic how a gym would start other than, me and my cousin, I was a firefighter, worked as a full-time firefighter. They paid my tuition to Tennessee Tech. In the process, the head strength and conditioning coach showed us a CrossFit video and he was like, hey man, you're a firefighter. You obviously like working out. You should check this out. And kind of the rest is history from there. Got my level 1, loved it. And then my cousin, who me and his brother were 11 days apart. He's one of 6 boys. He lost his older brother and he was kind of in a weird kind of funky spot. And I was like, hey, why don't you move to Tennessee? And his mom's like, that's fine. He's 18, but the one rule is he's got to find a job. Well, we couldn't really find him a job. So we're like, hey, let's start training people in CrossFit. And so the affiliate really started there, and it's kind of had this kind of in and out type deal. In the process, we had CrossFit Mayhem. When I started competing, we got the affiliation. Dave Castro was like, hey, where do you train? And I told him we couldn't afford the affiliation fee. So he's like, hey, email me on Monday, So that's where CrossFit Mayhem was born. You know, we would use CrossFit, but we didn't have the money to be able to even call it CrossFit. Yeah.
Is Dave still waiving the fee? Or are you guys finally paying that fee?
I think we got a lifetime waive. We did affiliate the barn a couple years ago just for the open and stuff. So I think we do actually pay for the barn to be affiliated, but it's a nonprofit. And so, you know, through that process, like I said, we kind of merged with CrossFit Cookeville for a little while because it was ran out of the strength and conditioning facility at Tennessee Tech. And it just didn't make sense because I was a GA there for a while after I was done with the fire department. And so in a weird roundabout way, Chip ended up closing that because he kind of stepped down as the strength and conditioning coach. So we didn't have a place to do it anymore. So we reopened CrossFit Mayhem. And kind of my rules with that was I wanted Darren to have a job. I wanted the people of Cookeville to have a good place to do CrossFit, and I didn't want to lose money. So that was really the basis of CrossFit Mayhem when it reopened. And we're doing that now. So, you know, CrossFit Mayhem has been, man, it's the most successful it's ever been. The actual physical Cookeville location, Josh does an incredible job with that, and the team here. You know, it's cool to see. You know, at first it was interesting. You know, I think everybody looked at CrossFit Mayhem in Cookeville and thought, oh, that's only where, you know, elite CrossFitters go. And we've had a couple of affiliates come and go in Cookeville. And finally, I think people have realized, hey, you know, Mayhem is, if you walk in here at any time throughout the day, you're going to see our oldest members, 84, 83 years old. And then obviously we have, you know, my kids are probably our youngest members. We got a couple younger than that now, which are 4 and 5 years old. So we've got the full spectrum, and it's really cool to see high level athletes in the back, you know, kind of have an athlete facility back there, but also mixing in with, you know, I'll take the class every once in a while. We'll see some of the athletes take the class. So CrossFit Mayhem is kind of this, I guess, ecosystem of high level athletes and people who just want to be fit for life. And so that's been really cool. That's been a ton of fun. Like you were saying with the Mayhem athlete stuff, that was just kind of a natural progression, I guess, is when, you know, online programming got big. We just literally took what I did. We called it What's Rich Doing, and people could follow along. We stole that tag from Jason Khalipa. He still wants rights to that, but, you know, he kind of wrote that on his wall, and it was in the documentary, and we were like, hey, that's a great name for a program. So we called it What's Rich Doing, and literally it's just I keep a log on a note, and we post that. But it's morphed into more than that now. We've got, you know, 30-minute at home, no equipment workouts, garage gym workouts, Everyday Hero, which is more towards military, police, fire, a little less gymnastics, more grunt work type stuff. And then on the upper end, we've got Compete, which is, you know, people that are training to go to the CrossFit Games remotely, and we have individual coaching in there. So that's kind of morphed into this whole other business. Jake Lockhart oversees that. And we've brought in, you know, a bunch of coaches in the last couple months to really help with the individual side. We saw that, you know, the kind of need for that. So that's morphed into something. And then, like you said, Froning Farms really didn't even really start out as a business, or we weren't really thinking about making a business. It was me and my best friend growing up, Matt. We both live, you know, we grew up a mile from each other. We now live a mile from each other, and we had 160 acres. And we were both firefighters at the same time, and he did cattle on his off days. So he knew cattle, and I'm like, hey, we got this land. I don't want our kids to be shitheads. So let's come up with some chores that they have to do. Let's raise some cattle. And in the process, I read American Buffalo by Stephen Ranella, and man, I've just always something cool about buffalo bison. And I was like, hey, let's do bison. He's like, yeah, but I don't know anything about bison. I'm like, yeah, me either. So we'll learn it. And man, it's been awesome. It's been a cool endeavor, and it's morphed into a business, you know, like you said, apparel and meat snacks and healthy meat snacks instead of, you know, I see people eating Slim Jims or some of that other stuff, and you're just like, man, you look at our stuff and there's very limited ingredients and it tastes good. So, yeah, I mean, a lot of irons in the fire, but like I said, it always comes back to where I started with having a team around you, trusting those guys and girls, and you know, not being afraid to step in. And my leadership style is more of a like, hey, I'll get in there and grind with you versus I'm not going to just stand there and tell you what to do. And really came from my parents. You know, they're both that style where, you know, I hated chores as a kid, but they were going to be right there with us and doing the chores with us. And so I guess it's just kind of turned into my leadership style.
That's awesome.
So it's a really long roundabout.
No,
you know,
that's
12
a great
years consolidated into one.
That's a great summary, man. And it's, you know, you're kind of downplaying, you know, these endeavors that have become very successful, but it is kind of cool to see, you know, like the Mayhem programming, like it started off of like, hey, what is Rich doing? Right. And it probably was kind of around the concept of, hey, this guy just won the CrossFit Games 4 years in a row in dominant fashion. There's probably a lot of people out there that are interested in how this guy trains and the programming he uses, right? So like, of course that morphed into, you know, like the what it has now become, but that's so cool that it was almost this offhand like thought of like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's been, then, like I said, it's just a note that we just kept up with, put it on the internet on Spotify.
And at what point did you realize, hey, this is actually something we can monetize? Because as I look at like the programming business, you know, there's a few big ones that like, you know, imagine you all kind of compete, you know, in a similar, you know, you're fishing from a similar pond of people. And it's cool that you've expanded outside of just like CrossFitters, you know, you have like the you know, hero.
That's our big thing now is trying to, you know, obviously we know CrossFit works and but there's this kind of stigma of like, oh, I'll get hurt or I don't need to be doing all this gymnastic stuff. And that's kind of where we've gone with Everyday Hero. And actually, didn't even realize, but I'm wearing the shirt, the Mayhem Hunt. And that's kind of the idea with what we're going to move towards as well with the hunting style stuff is like, we have this incredible background of, you know, fitness and training people. And I've really gotten over probably the last 6 years into Western style hunting. And so like when I'm hunting, I'm thinking, all right, how can I make this easier when I come back in a couple months, come back next year, whatever it is. And so I was like, hey, let's do some stuff around some hunt stuff, because that's just what I'm passionate about right now. Like I've almost fallen in love with. It's almost my like next, you know, I'll do the mountain biking. I did Leadville this year, which was a ton of fun and a different like challenge. But also in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, all right, the mountain biking will help me getting ready for hunting season. So I think it's just looking at different things and not necessarily even trying to monetize it. It's like, hey, I like to do it. So obviously other people like to do it. So how can we help them, one, but also pay for what we're doing in the process, you know?
Yeah, that's awesome, man. Yeah, I am trying to get into the hunt scene as well. You know, we launched our outdoor brand last September, and we're working with Aaron Snyder, you know, big bow hunter. I'm sure you've probably come across Aaron.
Yeah, all videos, yep.
We were supposed to him and I were supposed to do a big mountain goat hunt in British Columbia in August, and I had to pull out. I was going dealing with some personal stuff, but next year we're planning on getting out there, and I know once you get that taste, man, and you experience that, it seems like it's like 100% of the guys just get hooked on it, and it's an incredible thing. And I know you probably take a lot of heat, you know, when you're showing your hunting install. I mean, you know, we need to get into that because it is what it is. But it's cool, man, that you've been, you know, we talked about this off air, but as you've gotten, you know, out of your competitive career, you know, at least the main part, you seem to become even more authentic than you were before. And you kind of have taken the approach of, hey, this is who I am. I wouldn't argue it's controversial at all. Like I align with, you know, your values and principles, but you know, in our current society, you post that hunting picture, or you talk about God, or, you know, you talk about this, and all of a sudden you got all these people coming out of their keyboards, and you know how it goes. So, but it's been
gives
cool.
Everybody a voice.
Yeah, exactly. But you have appeared to stay kind of pretty steadfast and not having to, you know, kind of bend to that. And that's been cool to see, man, because I do think we need a lot more authenticity right now in our society. Sure. And everyone doesn't have to always go in the direction the wind's blowing that day. You know what I mean? No.
And then, man, I have a good friend, Jim Hensel. And he's like, if 50% of the people love you, 50% hate you, you're probably doing it right. You know, cause you can't make everybody happy. And, you know, I tried to be authentic even when I was an athlete, but let's be honest, I didn't do a ton when I was an athlete. I only thought about competing and only like to be the best in the world at anything. You're hyper focused on that. So it's hard to be controversial because all I was thinking about was training and doing those types of things. And then now I'm like, I got a little bit more free time to meddle and think about those things and actually be, you know, have an opinion on those things, or, you know, do different things in life. So that's probably why I'm a little bit more, I guess, what we would call normal, but, you know, and the internet would probably call it controversial.
For sure. And I've kind of become that with Born Primitive a little bit. And part of it, I think in the beginning is it's a little bit of fear of like, you know, this is my business, right? We have 75 employees.
Absolutely.
We have like 6 international distributors all over the world. Like there's a lot riding on the success of the business.
Yeah, it's not just you, it's other people.
in the early years, I was always a little gun shy to kind of put our values out there, just because it's like, ooh, I just kind of want to make everyone happy. And I realized as we got more established that you have to stand for something. You can't be afraid of that. And
or you're just another brand.
Exactly. And if you're trying to speak to everyone, you're speaking to no one, right? So, hey, be proud of what you stand for. Don't waver. And then more people will be stoked to rep what you represent and what that logo means. I've seen that through what you've done. I kind of have a dorky, CrossFit question going back to the, the individual days. And I would imagine even into the team, but your programming, I'm trying to articulate the best I can, but in the early days, the programming concept of CrossFit, I think, was still kind of the wild frontier, right? And I would say it's still kind of getting figured out, but you guys have refined it quite a bit. And it's this weird thing because, you were a collegiate baseball player, right? And, I played, football in college. We came from the world of kind of conventional strength and conditioning that a lot of these strength coaches, probably even my coach from college, even though he's the man, would look at CrossFit and laugh and be like, that doesn't make any sense. You're not programming enough recovery. Why would you ever do 30 clean and jerks in a row? That makes no sense. Like, we're doing 3 at most with like a 5-minute rest, you know what I mean? To get that explosive power. And so we flip this thing on its head, where the volume of training is insane. From what I remember with your programming in the early days, the volume you were doing was just nuts. And maybe it still is. And I guess walk me through how you came up with that, because you almost seem to be a little bit of a maverick. And I wonder if that is a big reason why you were successful, and you were the 4-time, back to back to back, 4 in a row. Do you think you were doing more programming than your competition? Or do you think like the Khalipas and all those guys were still doing the same, but maybe you were doing it, in a slightly more scientific way? But I just remember seeing some videos where you would like show all your programming and it'd be like, this guy just trained you trained 6 days a week. And then on Sunday, you'd be like, I'm going on like an 8-mile hike. That was like your recovery, and it was like, how the heck does this guy maintain that volume? But then you'd see on Sunday of the CrossFit Games, Rich Froning would be coming, you know what I mean? And usually
that's where I make my money. Yeah.
You would like chunk a workout on like day 1 and get like 35th on like a swim or something. But it was like, you knew Rich, you knew on Sunday, like stand by cause that's Rich's day. Right. It's, it's kind of like Tiger, throwing the red on the Sunday. And it was always really cool to see. And I always wondered, how much of that is attributed to your programming, that on Sunday you were still good to go and the other athletes were starting to get beaten down from the programming. So kind of a go anywhere with that one, but I'm just from a human performance standpoint, how the heck did you come up with the programming? And did you just kind of say, hey, I'm going to err on the side of being overly aggressive. And I hope, when I get to the games, it pays off.
Yeah, man. I think it's kind of a mix of all of everything, to be honest. It's like, genetics. You can't play or can't say that genetics don't play some type of role in, what my body's made up of, different muscle fibers, how my body can handle volume versus others, guys and girls that just get hurt all the time. It is what it is. Is that a hurt? Is it a real injury? Is it mental? Like, there's a mental piece to it. So like, I don't want to downplay any of that and say that, I'm not genetically predisposed to just be good at CrossFit. I'm 5'9", like almost the perfect height for it, whatever. Like CrossFit's one sport that you're like, hey, it may actually pay off to be a little smaller, a little shorter, whatever it is. So there's all these things, my upbringing with my parents and hard work and all that stuff, all of that. Yes. But for me, I think having the exercise science background, looking at it from that standpoint, having a really good grasp on what CrossFit was, the different energy systems. Like I said, you can go into the science of it. And then yes, I had a grasp on that. And then also, I just liked to work out and enjoyed that. And I've kind of come to terms with over the years that there's probably some type of substance abuse, or there is some substance abuse history in my family. And I think fitness and that adrenaline, the high from working out, was a little bit of my, substance abuse. And then I just didn't want anybody else to outwork me. So I thought I had to keep doing more. And, you see highlights and snapshots of people's life and you're like, oh, they're doing this much, I got to do more. And so I think it's just kind of a culmination of all of that stuff of like, hey, I need to do more. I like to work out. I've got a good system. I've got good people here that would always, if I needed somebody to jump in, they would. And so I guess the answer to your question is yes, all of those things. And, for football, yeah, absolutely. Like, we know that the more powerful you are, the better off it's going to be. So 3s and 5s, we don't need to be doing 30 clean and jerks for time. But in CrossFit, when we're training for general physical preparedness, maybe we're going to have to pick something up multiple times and move stuff and do all these things. So you're training for 2 different things. If I have, like, I'm working with my ex-high school baseball team doing some programming. Yeah, we're going to do some CrossFit. I might take some CrossFit methodology, but here's the deal. I know the demands of the sport. And so I'm going to change a little bit of that more towards, like, these kids need to be able to hit it, like one max effort swing, whatever it is. And then like a what is a 60-yard dash, like 6 seconds. So I'm going to train more towards that. If we start pushing, doing long endurance stuff, we're going to lose some on that back end. And so, you can take some of CrossFit's principles, the, high intensity functional movements, and constantly vary it. But if we know the demands of the sport, we don't want to vary it too much. So we're going to do more high intensity and functional movement. And so I think, like I said, having the background of all of that, having, probably some type of mental issue on wanting to work out all the time, helped with that. And then, we watched videos where we were like, all right, it says only to work out once. I remember the first day we did 2 workouts in a day. We did 1 workout in the morning. We're like, all right, we're good. Like, you go to a level 1, they're like, if you work out twice, you could die. And then that afternoon we did a workout. We're like, maybe you want to try to work out again and see what happens. And we didn't die. And we were like, oh, we can work out twice a day. And so that's how 2-a-days happened. And so, man, it's just been a thing. And I feel better when I move every day. And so, we talk about this Sunday, Thursdays and Sundays usually around here are pretty light. And I'll probably do more than most on a Thursday and Sunday just because I like to work out. I like to, as long as my body's not too beat up. Once I get moving, most days I'm still pretty beat up, but I'll get moving and I just feel better, So it's been something. And now I'm like, do as I say, not as I did, because we've learned some things throughout the year. And then back then, we were training for, as soon as the games were over, we did the Invitational, which was Team USA. And so I'm training for that because I want to win that as a team. Like, I'm representing my country. Like, I'm trying to win. So there was no real off season. And so now we've kind of learned that, all right, hey, let's take a little bit of downtime just for mental, peace of mind. Like, I've noticed, like, some of these kids just get burnt out real easy, where, like, back then it's just what we did. So we're still learning really.
Yeah, man. I mean, I'm sure, just at the physical level, that Sunday payoff, that had to be a real thing. I know some of it might have been mental, where you were like, okay, this is my day. But there had to be a physical component where you could see, all right, these people are a little banged up.
A little beat up. Let's put the metal down. Yep.
Yeah. Let's slam a couple PBJs and get after it.
Let's go. Right? Yep. That's right.
Hey, everybody, just want to interrupt the podcast super quick to let you know that our biggest sale of the year is coming up this Wednesday. This is always a huge moment for us. So if you've been waiting to stock up on Born Primitive, or if you're new to us and have never shopped us before, this is a unique opportunity. One cool thing to call out, we will have VIP early access. You'll get a 2-hour head start. And most importantly, everyone who shops during that window will get a free pair of joggers or leggings with their purchase. No caveat, no catch. So head to the link in our bio or head to our website. You can sign up to get on that list. On Wednesday, you will get a text with an exclusive link to shop that 2-hour early window. So go ahead and sign up. It'll run through Monday. So plenty of opportunities to get on there, but kind of while supplies last, and get after it. So, speaking of the CrossFit stuff, Rich and I were talking before we went on air about the first time I met Rich was at the 2013 CrossFit Central East Regional. That was
Central East.
You remember? That was before.
Oh, yeah,
and it was Columbus, and I think it was at the fairground facility. Remember?
Huge fairground.
And I, to me, man, I reminisce, but those in my mind was like the glory days, right? And that was my first time ever competing. and I was on our regional team, and I didn't even know what the heck CrossFit was. I had
Nice.
started it not that long ago. They took this meathead football guy and taught him how to do muscle ups, and I was like, oh, that's kind of fun. I like to compete.
Sweet. Yeah.
It gave me an outlet to kind of get back in the arena, but met you in the warm up area. And then the co-founder Mallory snuck into the warm up area and was doing a survey on our snatch shorts, which is our product. I don't know if you remember this. She had a clipboard and she was going around and bugging all the athletes.
All right. Okay.
And we snuck her in. I think she put some, booty shorts and a sports bra on, maybe put some chalk on. So she looked like an athlete, slipped right past. So we still joke about that. And awesome. She was, so that was our first experience. And then we were able to punch our ticket. We actually went with your team got first. Obviously you were competing as an individual. We got second.
Okay.
And I think was it nice. Thomas, I think was the big
Thomas
guy.
Cox, Darren,
and
Ben,
Darren,
so
Ben,
I think Jackie, Jen, and Lauren. Yeah,
it was fun. So we got to go. We got second.
Yeah.
You all got first that year, and got to go out to Carson and see the magic. And that kind of goes into my next question is when I look at CrossFit now, and I had Dave on the pod, and he was really transparent, and it was a great conversation. But as I look at the sport, in my mind, it's lost a little bit of the magic. When I look back to the Carson days with Rich under the lights and the Kalipas and, that Saturday night workout in the tennis stadium, and it was just electric, man. And it just seemed like CrossFit was sweeping across the country and the world, and it was on fire. And Dave was, I think pretty transparent, kind of saying, there were a few years where they kind of lost a little bit of momentum, and obviously getting hit with the pandemic didn't help. We all have a stake in the success of CrossFit.
Yeah,
and
sure.
I'll admit, man, Born Primitive would not be what it is without CrossFit. We were born in CrossFit.
Yep.
And I would say a huge, maybe not probably the biggest reason we were successful is because we were growing with this outlier event that was happening in society in fitness that we just happened to latch onto. And since I was in the scene competing, it was like it only made sense to grow our brand there. So I attribute all of our success to that, at least in the early days. So when I look at the health of CrossFit, we kind of are all stakeholders. Obviously you are as well, being an affiliate owner and doing programming. But as you look at CrossFit, just in your honest opinion, do you think is it on the rise? Is it on the decline? Are there warning signs that we need to look out for? Do you feel like the ship is getting steered in the right direction right now?
Man, I'm 100% with you on, we wouldn't be here without CrossFit. And I 100% believe in the methodology of CrossFit. Believe in the community of CrossFit. It's incredible when you go to these events. You just see how many lives have been impacted. And I guess it's just hard. It's a sport. Obviously, I wouldn't even contribute to the pandemic. I'd contribute it to the 2017 restructure of the entire system of the games with sanctionals and all that stuff, which I actually didn't hate the sanctional model, but I just think, man, it was CrossFit not having a full media team, those types of things, and we've got so many different kind of platforms in the space. We all want CrossFit to succeed. We all need CrossFit to succeed for all of us to be around, or that's what we want. And so it is hard. I feel like if I'm to pinpoint something, I'd say 2017, 2018 was kind of the decline. And we can look at, was it the restructuring of the games, the firing of the entire media staff? Was that it? I don't know. I don't know if it was already to that tipping point. You look at the games to that point, I think the statistic was they were losing money, but you look at the games and it was kind of what I look at it as is a marketing tool for CrossFit. It's not necessarily what CrossFit is. It's not what you're going to do in your gym for the most part. It is one expression of it. It's the highest of highs. Hey, this is what doing CrossFit in excess in, probably in an unhealthy way will get you to. That's really, to be honest, to be a professional in any sport, in anything, you have to overdo it. But hey, it's a kind of a festival for all of us to come together and celebrate what is possible through fitness, and to tell all these stories and meet up with other people that do it across the world. That's what's so awesome about it. Is it doesn't matter where you go, what country, we don't speak the same language, but it attracts the same type of people. And those people are, you learn a lot with people through shared suffering. And, obviously CrossFit I always tell people CrossFit is for everybody, but not everybody's for, like, not everybody wants to do CrossFit. Some people don't want to hurt. And people like us probably seek out challenges. Like I need something that is hard so I can make sure, and kind of like, it's a litmus test for me. Where am I at mentally? Where am I at? I need challenges. I need something to train for. It's just my nature. And so that's why I'm attracted so much to CrossFit and enjoy it so much, is like, I like hard things and like to find out where I stand and where I'm at in life at that moment. And so, man, I want CrossFit to right the CrossFit HQ ship, and I feel like bringing Dave back was a big thing. I feel like the games this year was awesome. I don't know from a number standpoint, but the programming was cool. We had that kind of our campground set up, which was awesome, having people in and out of there, seeing the community there. I hope we're righting the ship, but here's the deal: is like, we're going to keep being CrossFit Mayhem, or keep being Mayhem, and use CrossFit methodology. We 100% stand by that. And then if you walk into these doors at CrossFit Mayhem, you're going to see community. So that's the big things. And so I don't think it's, everybody wants to point fingers at CrossFit HQ on what they're doing, but it's not up to them. It's up to us as CrossFit affiliates, as CrossFit athletes, everyday athlete or high level athlete, to kind of keep the name of CrossFit going. And so I think the hard part too is like, a lot of these guys and girls, it's what we wanted. We wanted to professionalize sports. We wanted athletes to get paid. They don't train in affiliates much anymore. They don't coach at affiliates much anymore. And so they're not as connected to the community. And so it's, I don't know if it's hard for some people to connect with those guys and girls because of that. But I mean, you still go to some of these events at Rogue and stuff like that, and you see people pretty passionate about the athletes. So to answer your question, I think it's us as a CrossFit community that are the ones that are supposed to keep pushing our affiliates, keep pushing our gyms, and bringing people in and changing people's lives that way. And I think the CrossFit Games is a separate thing. It shouldn't be completely separate. Yeah, like it's a marketing tool for CrossFit, but I don't think that's CrossFit.com or CrossFit HQ's job, to do that. To promote that as much as it is our job to go out and tell people how awesome CrossFit is. Not like weird, but invite people to come work out.
Yeah, no, and I think the people that have participated in it, the reason it's successful is, you hit the nail on the head, is that shared suffering. And it creates that community. You could drop in. When I was in the military, I was traveling all over the world, country for sure, but the world as well. And any affiliate you dropped into, if we were on a training trip and we were in a city for 3 or 4 weeks, like by the end of week 1, you're tight with like everyone in the class.
Part of that gym. Yeah.
That 5:30 class, or maybe the 6 a.m. And it's just, it would take a couple workouts. Those are the most
passionate classes. Those are our most, I'm like, if you work out at 5 o'clock, you have to be passionate.
Yeah, you're a freaking psycho. So, it's, once you've kind of experienced it, it makes sense. I understand now why this is a world phenomenon. And then if you've never done that style of fitness, and you kind of feel the euphoria and just and then as people's bodies transform, particularly people that maybe weren't elite athletes, and they start seeing like some abs showing up in their deltoid, and they're like, oh damn, I'm getting kind of maybe a little bit yoked, and I've never been yoked in my life. And then so then there's that, but then you look forward to it more from a social component, because you're hanging out in the warm up and just seeing how. So I think that's the secret sauce. That's why it achieves success, and I hope obviously it continues to be successful for everyone's sake, because I do truly believe in it, and I still do it actively. So, but we'll have to wait and see. I know the games is a totally different dynamic, but I agree with you that it almost becomes a marketing wheel for just the health of the sport in general. But I was curious for you, because I've seen headlines and stuff over the years, but does CrossFit still involve you much? You know what I mean? And are you all on good terms? I feel like they would want you as a spokesperson of the sport. Is there any weird, bad blood there?
I don't have any, agreement whatsoever, any written anything with them. No bad blood. I think, we're still a CrossFit affiliate. We still, like I said, I'm 100% believe in the methodology, 100% believe in the community. but here's the deal. Like with what we do, like I've got control over our space, like what we have. And so I've got to look out for all of our people here that, like you're saying, you're 75 employees. I've got to take care of my guys and girls and our team. And so, yeah, we're going to definitely safeguard some things and, get into different things. And so, like I said, we got the individualized programming and we have the Mayhem affiliate programming. And so, there's gyms out there. I think we're around 1,800-ish, maybe 2,000-ish that do our programming at their gyms.
Wow.
And
that's crazy.
I mean,
that's
it's
awesome.
It's
awesome.
Pure CrossFit, like
yeah.
I'm not at odds whatsoever with CrossFit and hope that they don't ever see that. And I don't think, like me and Dave, we joke around, and if Dave ever needed something, like truly needed something, not just like, hey, I need you to come, help with whatever for something that, is not, but if he needed true help, then I'd be there. And I've always been like, hey, if CrossFit, if it's for the betterment of CrossFit, and now, I mean, I would be 100% lying if I didn't say if it's in the best interest of CrossFit Mayhem or Mayhem, then, I'm going to support that first. But we're in line with CrossFit. And so I want CrossFit to succeed and CrossFit HQ to succeed. Because here's the deal, is like, you've got I'm just going to use, the three kind of names at the moment, or four, I guess. You got Mayhem, you got Proven, you've got HWPO, and you got Street Parking. Like, here's the deal, is we're all doing CrossFit. And the name CrossFit is better if we're all together. Like, we all succeed if more people are doing CrossFit. Through CrossFit, they're going to find kind of our names or our kind of niche. And so, we're better together. And so I think CrossFit doing well is better for all of us.
Yeah. The rising tide raises all ships, man.
All ships, right? Yep.
Curious to see, how it'll play out. And I know, there's a lot changing. It's a very dynamic thing. And I to Dave's credit, I told him on the podcast that, like, it was such a meteoric and unprecedented rise that there's no way you can navigate that growth without some mishaps. Right. Yep. And, Dave joked about, like, they deleted the Instagram handle when there was like 2 million followers. It's like what, like, come on, guys, like, what are we doing here?
Yeah. And I mean, to Greg's credit, he's brilliant. Like, for him to come up with what he did and do what he did with it was great. I don't know this for a fact, but it feels like at some point, he thought his ideas were better than everybody else's. And that's kind of what happened. That's what that felt like, was like, almost like him getting mad because Dave was getting too big type deal is what it felt like from the outside. I don't know if that's what happened, but that's what it felt like. And that was kind of, for me, if I'm to point at one spot, that's when it kind of all went downhill.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to justify, deleting your
Instagram. I mean, social. And here's the deal: is like, I hate the whole social media type thing, but it's a necessary. It's what you got to do.
It is. So, yeah, no, it totally is. I'm curious from a business standpoint, the programming. So you have almost 2,000 affiliates that subscribe to Mayhem programming, and as I understand it, that's so an affiliate owner can say, hey, I don't need to worry about writing my own programming.
Yep.
Rich and his team's dialed. Why not just pay them a monthly fee and we'll just implement their programming, which I think is brilliant. So when you look across your businesses, and of course, to the extent you're willing to share, what is your biggest revenue stream? Because that, to me, that seems like it would be huge. Are you getting more individual subscribers to your programming, or is it? And then you got Froning Farms. I mean, you got, like you said, a lot of irons in the fire.
A lot of irons in the fire.
Have there been any things that surprised you and you're like, holy crap, I was sitting on a gold mine, didn't even realize it?
Programming, I think, is, there's no product, it is a product because it is programming, but you're not buying something to sell. Like with the bison sticks, we've got to buy the meat or raise the meat or whatever it is, buy the animal, and then pay all this other stuff. And then your margins are slim. Where programming, we've got coaches and stuff like that. Like Darren and Christy kind of do the affiliate stuff. So Darren will write the programming and do all the warm-up videos and all that type of stuff. And then Christy is an incredible resource from a business side of like, hey, how can we do whatever and help you with it? So it's not just programming. Like there's other things in there. She's incredible with that stuff. And then on the, I don't know the real number yet, or like off the top of the head, because it kind of ebbs and flows on the individual side, but we have way more individual programming individuals on our programming than affiliates. And so, that's kind of our bread and butter right now. And so we want to make sure that, those people are taken care of. Those are, you look at other parts of the business and you're like, hey, we should do this. We should do this. And then you're like, hey, as long as it's not detracting from the quality that we're putting out in the area that really make us money. Like I look at apparel, it makes some here, but we're just making t-shirts. We're not trying to make, different shorts and different things like that. So it's more of a marketing tool. I look at it. So, if our margins aren't as big on apparel, I'm okay with, or like media. Like I look at media and you look at media on the books and you're like, wow, that was a huge red, but it's huge for marketing. Like instead of paying for a marketing firm or whatever, we have some in-house marketing that we do. But I look at YouTube as like, that's where we make a bunch of our content, and you create that community, because then people see, this is the real authentic. Yeah. You're going to see on Instagram, like, I don't love Instagram and some of those other ones because you're seeing a snapshot, you're seeing the highlights. I feel like YouTube and podcasts and stuff like that is long form. You're actually seeing what people, it's harder to fake on YouTube. I'm sure people still do that, but if you watch our YouTube, it's about as real as you're going to get, minus some probably cussing, because you don't know who's watching. So try to tone that down a little bit on there, but for the most part, like what you see on YouTube is what you get.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And that we've kind of, taken that same evolution. That's why we started the podcast. And I do agree that YouTube, the long form content, it's so much more authentic because you can curate it to a degree, but there's only so much you can do.
So much you can fake, right? Where Instagram is like literally, hey, look at my morning, whatever. And hey, I hit this snatch today. You're not going to show the 50 snatches that you missed to get to that point or whatever, or the meltdowns. And so, I feel like Instagram's your highlights and YouTube's your behind the scenes.
Absolutely. Rich, I'm curious, you're obviously, a man of strong faith and a family man as well. How has your faith influenced, the man you've become and how you've run your businesses and how you approached becoming an elite athlete?
Yeah, man, I think, my story is pretty well documented I grew up in faith, huge, like both sides of my family were very strongly rooted in faith. And for me, it was great to have that kind of upbringing and, those influences. But it was more of like something I had to do versus something I wanted to do for a long time. And then, in 2010, when I fell off that rope, with some kind of introspection and some help from others and just, actually getting into the word of the Bible, I realized now that whatever I was doing at the time, it's kind of defined who I was as a person, as an athlete. Look back at baseball, football, firefighting, whatever, and then CrossFit had kind of become that, how I had measured my success or my self-worth as a person. And to have that kind of like, everybody's like, you got second. It's not that big a deal. But for me, that was devastating. And so, like I said, good mentors, good, just some friends, close friends with some hard questions. I realized that faith was, to that point, God, Jesus was where I was like a Santa Claus. Like, hey, what can you do for me? What can you do for me? Let me read a verse that applies to my situation completely out of context, but makes me feel good on the inside. And so at that point, I was like, man, I'm not living like Christ called us to live. I'm not living a life that is Christ-centered and like, what can I do for you, God? And kind of show me where you want me to go. And so from then on, I could, I hate the whole, well, Christians can't compete because, God and Jesus tell us not to, like whatever. And I'm like, no, complete opposite. Like I can compete from a position of strength, because I know at the end of the day, even if I lose, which I hate on a personal level, I hate to lose at anything ever, that I'm going to be okay, because that's not who defines me or what defines me as a human being. And so for years I could compete from that. And I've just kind of taken that into business and who we are at Mayhem. And so for us at Mayhem, we have 4 values that we stick to, and they're based off of personal values that I have, and faith, family, fitness, and service. Like I look at the end of the day, for me personally, how did I do in my faith? 1 through 10, try to be as objective as possible. Did I get in the word? Did I live out what I'd say? Did I, and hey, there's days where I do really good and there's days where I do really bad. and have a short memory on both of those days. So, because it's like fitness, you've got to carry it on. And so I look at the end of the day, how did I do family wise? Was I good dad? Was I good husband? Short memory, good days, short memory, bad days, try to put together as many good days as I can. And then for me, the easiest one, honestly, and shamefully, the easiest one for me to get in is fitness. Like that, it's almost like I have to do it, obviously my family too, but like, it's just the one that's easiest I can look at every day is fitness. And so I'm trying to work on the other two, like, hey, make sure you're in the word every day, live it out. And then family, it's like, take some, like I'm with my family at all times, but hey, let's have some like actual deep, meaningful, whatever it's conversation or quality time, whatever it is, and not just let it be in passing and us just being in the same vicinity and like count that as being a good parent or a good husband. And those things are hard for me. Like I said, at no point in my life do I ever question if my parents love me, but we weren't, like deep, meaningful conversation type people. And so I'm trying to see if I can, do a little bit better job on that. And like, do I feel like I missed out on anything? No, not at all. But do I feel like, hey, it could have been good to have some of that? Absolutely. And so, my parents now, as they've slowed down, like my dad tries to have deep, meaningful conversation. It just feels kind of weird to me. I'm like, wait a minute, like we've never talked about this. Like he'll give me advice on life. And I'm like, hold on, like, what are you trying to do here? And so, I don't ever want to have that with my kids. I want them to feel like, hey, like, come to me. If you have something, and I'm not going to judge you. I'm not going to not like I said, I'm not to say my parents didn't do that. Like my drug talk with my dad, and I don't know if he might get mad. I might get a text later about this, but we're sitting there working on a 4-wheeler. And he's like, hey, we need to talk. And I'm like, oh man, here's the birds and the bees. He looks at me and he goes, you're pretty good at sports. It's like, you have a chance to play college baseball. He's like, I don't recommend you smoke weed. He's like, I was pretty good at sports, started smoking weed, made me lazy. I don't recommend you smoke weed. I've never touched weed because of that conversation, like I was just like, all right, I can get with that, like he said it. So I was like, all right. And so, those are our type of like deep conversations, and, it's just dudes, it is what it is. So yeah, so I look at those: faith, family, fitness, and then those are my personal. And then at the gym here, we add service. So we tried to, that's why we started Mayhem Mission, and to just be a positive impact on the world.
Well, those are awesome pillars, man. And I think, for all of us, the most difficult thing is just seeking that balance, right? Particularly, I think for guys like us that are hyper competitive, we're so sometimes focused on pursuing things that can achieve tangible, successful results, right? So like a business outcome or a financial outcome, it's like, it's measurable. So we're drawn to that. If we're competing in sport, there's win or lose, right? It's measurable. It's black and white. Whereas like, let's say the family or the faith metric, there's no scoreboard, right?
No scoreboard.
So I think some people tend, potentially to deviate towards what is measurable, and they focus on their effort towards those things, because then they can be validated that, hey, I was the best in this, or hey, I made this much money, or whatever. And it takes a lot of, I think, self-awareness to know that, hey, although the quality time I'm spending with my daughter with my phone down doesn't show up on a scoreboard somewhere, and I don't put it on a resume to get hired for a job, and no one's ever gonna follow me on Instagram because of that or whatever.
Right.
Those things are just as important, and we have to make sure we almost keep our own score. And it's so cool. You kind of even mentioned that with faith and family. How am I doing? You almost have to grade yourself on something that really isn't truly measurable. But I'll say this, man, the fact that you're even thinking about it, you're way ahead of the game. And I've tried to, now that I'm a dad, do the same thing. Is like, I have to think about it because I'm so damn competitive. If I don't, it's like, well, no, I got to fire out emails tonight, and I got to, I'm scrapping, people are sleeping right now. This is when I work. This is when I get ahead, and you get going, and I'm getting amped up even saying it.
I know, right?
And you got to reel that in a little, right? So maybe it's
I can remember the specific moment I took Instagram off my phone. I'm sitting there on the phone looking DMs or something, and my kids are playing on the floor. I'm like, what the hell am I doing? And so right there, I took it off. And like, not to say that other things don't take the place of that, but you're like, all right, if I can start eliminating some of these things. And man, it was, for me, I was like, dang, you start thinking about those times like, it almost shameful that it took me that long to do that. Like I think Lakeland was like 4 and my little two were like 2 and 1 at the same time. And I'm like, what am I doing? So it's tough, man. But it also, like, for me, the hard part too is like, I can justify almost everything by, hey, I'm providing for my family, like, and so I've got to really sit back and be like, all right, am I really, what's the negative and the positive here? And so, for the most part, like, if I can take my kids somewhere, and it may take me an extra hour to do it, but they're there and they're learning a little bit of something about, hey, this is what it takes to get successful or be successful, then I'm going to do it. And so at times, like I can tell people around here get annoyed, or even like my wife at times, she's like, they can stay here with me. And I'm like, no, I'll take them. We're going to go do whatever. And really that was the thing with the farm, was like, I wanted things for us to have to do and them to like learn and, valuable life lessons. Like, I hated it as a kid to do chores or outside. I felt like my parents were just like making up projects for us to do just for work. And like, I'd have friends over and they'd be like, oh, more people to help, And so I hated that. But now I'm like, dang, I appreciate that. Like, it did instill some stuff.
Yeah, it all makes sense, man. Once you get a little older, and then,
a little older, perspective, man, perspective.
Absolutely. Well, that's so cool, man. And for anyone else listening, like, this is something I think we all battle, and I think you can show yourself some grace, but I do think we do get sucked into our phones and all these other distractions, and it just comes down to quality time. And I will say, to caveat it, there are times I think to over index on work. If it's going to be a direct benefit to your family and those 100%. Around you, right? So when you were competing and, training 6 times, in the individual days, 6 times a day, then again on Sunday, like, I'm sure your wife had to acknowledge this is a sacrifice she was making to allow you to live that life. However, you're getting endorsements, you're winning the CrossFit Games, you're allowing you to
set
provide
us up for years to come.
Exactly. And as long as it's a kind of a decision that, okay, this is what we're doing for this specific purpose, I think it's okay to do that. And then you hope that while the quality of the time might be less, at least the quality is still there when you're present. But hey, Dad's got to go hit another session. You know what I mean? Well, it's just how it goes.
That was the hard part. And that was the big thing when I stepped away from individuals. Like, when we had Lakeland, my oldest, was my last year competing as an individual, because I knew that it's a culmination of things. You're burnt out at that point. Like, to be the best in the world at anything, you have to be obsessive. You have to be all consumed by that. And I was done. Like, I was burnt out. And then also having her, like, I knew I couldn't, like, when I was done training, I was thinking about the next thing I had to do. And I knew when she came, like, I didn't need to do that. And so I could still compete on a team and still provide and still do the endorsement thing, probably at a little bit of a decreased rate, but still make a pretty good living and then grow Mayhem in the process. But I could be present. When I was training, but when I was done, I could completely disconnect. Or if at night, instead of sneaking out to go do a 5K on the rower, I could give Lakeland a bath, and those types of things that, like,
love that.
I would think about that at night. Like, I'd be like, oh, I could go hop and get extra something in and sneak out with Hillary without Hillary noticing. But I didn't want to do that having kids. Like, it's just like, I knew that she needed to be kind of the center and the focal point, and so it all made sense at that point that it was time to be done as an individual.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. That's a damn good justification for the decision you made.
It was tough.
Yeah, it is tough. And that's why I got out of the military. I had the same kind of dilemma. In the line of work I was in, we were gone, some years, 300 days out of the year. I was having a blast. I was with the boys. We were doing cool stuff, doing good dude stuff, shooting machine guns and jumping out of planes. And I was living, it was for a young man, it was the perfect life. But then, I realized, all right, I need to be present. And while I do selfishly want to continue doing all these things that I worked really hard to do, you got to make hard decisions. But I don't think in the grand scheme of things, you'll never regret indexing to family. You know what I mean? You're not going to be 85 and be like, man, I should have done 2 more seasons as an individual back in 2016. It's just not going to happen.
Not going to happen.
But, I got 2 more questions for you, man. The last one we're saving is a fun one that I've been. But last CrossFit question: CrossFit Games. What is your favorite memory I want CrossFit Games specifically. Like, was it a workout? Like, I think back to the tennis stadium, those moments. But I don't want to obviously influence your decision. What, just for us CrossFit dorks, what is your best moment at the games?
I think, it's tough to really pinpoint one. I think anything in that tennis stadium was incredible. Madison is cool in the Coliseum, but it just wasn't the same as that open air. Some of those Saturday night workouts where it's just packed. They're bringing in extra stadium. Like any of those moments, there was the down and back chipper. I just remember the air was clear. I can remember random songs. I never really heard the music, but you can just remember random songs. Any of those, I think, my final event as an individual, just walking off the floor and having that, knowing that, it'd been a long weekend to get to that point, being able to share that with everybody on the floor. I think climbing into the stands in 2013 with, everybody in our crew wearing pink, was pretty cool. And then really, man, a lot of those memories as an individual feel like a completely different person, like just years ago. A lot of my cool memories that are the team ones, like that first year when we won out of nowhere, kind of surprise, and everybody just like knowing the sacrifice that everybody put into it. That's why the team stuff for me is you get to share it with other people. Like, I got to share, the individual stuff with people that had helped me train, but they weren't on the floor with you. So anything, I think back, we were talking about it this morning, the wall walk thruster workout that we did in the Coliseum, where it was like the crowd's counting down. And then you have this pressure of like, I have to get to 7, but at 5 I was like shaky, and I'm like, nobody wants to hear the like countdown and then and so that's just what's motivating you. And so like man, that's a cool memory. Like any of those in the Coliseum or just team memories are a ton of fun.
Yeah, I think for me, one that stands out is the axle bar overhead lunge. I think it was 165.
That was 2013.
Yeah, that was the year I was there, and Bridges got out ahead first because what was it? Ring muscle ups and handstand deficit on
3 rounds of 5 and 5. And then
so he, that's his jam. He got out of there out of the gate, and I think you got in second on the lunge, and he had to break like 3/4 of the way down. And you were just like the freaking Terminator, man. Like you knew when you got to him, you were not putting that damn bar down, and the place went fucking nuts. Sorry, pardon my French if my mom's listening. Sorry, Mom. But that was epic, man. But so many good memories.
That's the same year that Bridges tossed his belt.
Yes, on the deadlift. Oh yeah. He still talks about that.
Yeah.
Well, and that shows you the evolution, man. The athletes now to then, the numbers are all like the numbers are nuts. Not the same. I mean, you all, of course, at that time were still crazy elite,
right?
But it's just crazy to see now what is a more of a routine number than what would have been like a massive, like you'd clear the ladder number, and so. All right, last one here. I got a show and tell. I got to reach under the table to grab something. All right. So we're gonna have a little fun with this last, I guess, kind of a question, but more of a story. Okay. I have to caveat this with what I'm about to say. Rich was respectful and kind, and I probably didn't even know about this. So Rich, you're gonna have to comment on the end whether you did or not.
Let's go for it.
I have an email that I printed out from February 5th, 2014, back when Born Primitive was about to be born a couple weeks later. And my scrappy self, I really didn't have any money, and I'm trying to start this thing called Born Primitive. I didn't know what the heck I was doing. So my brilliant idea was like, hey, let's take like the Michael Jordan of the sport and see if he would be willing to like take equity in the company in exchange for like and promotion, but I can't give him any money. And I know like he's I think at that time, maybe you were a Reebok guy. So of course, you know what I mean? To me, I'm I
can give you some context after, I'm sure. So go ahead.
So I figured, I'm going to put myself out there and see if we can make this happen. And it ended up, I think, got through to your agent. I'll just use first names.
Webb Smith at the time. Webb,
yes,
good dude,
it was.
Helped me out a ton early on.
Yep. So I sent you this email. I threw the Hail Mary. I think I'd reached out a couple times and I didn't get a response, which is fine because you're a busy guy. But eventually, so this was the last email I sent. And I just thought it was kind of funny, man, trip down memory lane. And then I'll provide some more context. But I would ultimately end up printing this email out, and this email,
motivation.
This is the original right here. I took it out of the frame.
Nice.
Has been above my desk for the last 10 years. It was in my locker when I was in the military training, right next to the original newspaper cutout of 9/11, next to a picture of my family. So to put it in perspective, that's what this was with. Those are the three things that were motivating me.
Love it.
And so, little bulletin board material. And I think anyone who's launching any endeavor, where you start versus where you might end up, you never know where it's going to go. So be hungry, be scrappy. But yeah, just for fun, I'm going to go ahead and read. This was me back in 2014, thinking I was a little badass businessman with this really cool idea. So here we go. And I'm going to skip some parts, but sent at 3:05 Central Time from Indiana. Hey, Rich, I hope training is going well. I've been holding off contacting you personally out of respect for you because I know you are really busy with training and other endorsements. I wanted to take one final shot at getting a hold of you to see if you're interested in becoming a part owner and equity holder in our new company with zero financial contributions needed.
Nice.
My goal at the start of this in May was to find a strategic partner in both the Olympic lifting scene and CrossFit scene. Because the company is small and thus all the funds are going to product development and patent fees, I decided to take a creative approach and offer actual equity in the company in exchange for product endorsement and support. We are officially launching next Friday, and I really want you to be a part of our team. My brother and I would handle all the day-to-day aspects of the business, so you obviously wouldn't be expected to have a huge workload. For you, I hope you see this as a long-term opportunity that is different from other endorsements. You will be part of a business that you can watch expand and grow. And as that happens, the value of your equity will rise. It can never be taken away unless the company is sold, which would be a team decision. In closing, I hope you give this a little bit of thought and let me know where you stand. I can promise you that my brother and I are great teammates and we will make this worth your while. We were both Division I football players at Yale and both made the dean's list. Oh, wow, that's dorky. Nice. I can't believe I said that. I can't believe I said that in email. That's
solid, though.
That's pretty dorky. I will bring the same tenacity, intelligence, competitiveness, and work ethic to this product, and losing is not an option. And then it got cut off. I don't know how it closed it. So this went to Rich's agent again. So we got it, Rich. We're not throwing Rich under the bus here. And to credit to his agent, Webb Smith, we were not a business, and Rich had just won the CrossFit Games and was getting real companies were endorsing him, not some little wannabe business out of my living room in Indiana. But Webb responded. Let me find it here. Sorry. Bear, so there's no website and the product did not fit him last I checked. How would he properly access whether or not he'd want to go down this path? ? I am not too keen on the necessary legal work that it would take him, the out-of-state K1 ownership form, and this is the part that I highlighted, and his minority ownership for a product whose success would depend almost solely on him. Rich tends to focus on deals that minimize his needs to focus on that said deal. If there is no guaranteed money or royalties, the partnership will not work. I cannot advise him to be a minority partner of a pre-revenue startup. Webb Smith. So that was one of those moments, man, where
you're like, hey, here we go.
And, in the time, there was no thank you. There's no good luck. He didn't even sign it. It was just, was like, man, that was a gut punch.
Do you know Webb now?
I don't. No, I haven't. He seems to be
strictly business at that time.
And he honestly, I subscribe to some of his content, and he's like a brilliant mind in the e-commerce space. So the guy's killing it. Yeah. But if I ever see him, I'm showing him this email.
Show him that email. Absolutely.
And I'm going to give him a Post-it note because I was proposing 20%, just so you know. And I am going to give, whenever I see Webb, I'm going to just keep a Post-it note in my pocket at all times. I'm going to tell him what that 20% is and just kind of give him a chuckle. And he's going to say, what the hell is this? And I say, you don't know who I am, but go ask Rich. Go ask Rich.
That's good.
To
give you some backstory probably at that exact moment, I don't know the dates because it was, we had Nike on one side and Reebok on the other. And so we were basically playing that game. So at that point, my Reebok contract was coming up and Nike was just getting into the space. And so to give you, that's just the context behind that. Probably a little bit nicer of an email would have been more appropriate. But yeah, that's where we were at. And Webb did a great job. We haven't worked together in probably, I think right after that whole deal went down. Like I said, he's a good dude and he's done some good things, but that's funny to revisit that whole deal and think about what was going on in the CrossFit space at that time. I mean, like you're saying, like we were on our rise at that point and it's still growing, and you guys hit it right at the right time. And I mean, honestly, if I look back at that Reebok and Nike contract, I hit that at the perfect time. You look at now what's in the space and you're like, oh, wow. So nice. So it's cool to revisit that though, man. And it's impressive to see what you guys have done in space from that moment is pretty awesome.
Thank you, man. Yeah, and of course,
and Panchik gave me a couple pairs of shorts, and you guys have sent some of the outerwear for outdoor stuff, and it fits.
Oh yeah.
So there you go.
Good, man. It's all coming full circle.
Full circle.
When we did this podcast, I was like, I can't not because this is now framed on my desk. This is framed on my desk. It's been there it was originally just thumbtacked, and then it got upgraded to a frame at year 6.
I love it.
But it's the original, and And so did you? The Reebok, didn't you sign was it a 7 or 8 year deal?
10-year deal. So I'm on my last year right
crazy.
now. So, yeah, I mean, to think about that is it's crazy. Like to get a 10-year deal now, I don't think is
no way. And how close was Nike? Cause man, how different would it have been if you had become a Nike athlete for 10 years?
Yeah. Well, so Nike was that was the deal. It was I wanted at that point, I was having a kid. Yeah. I wanted long-term. It was I think, I don't even know. It was similar money.
Okay.
Oh, and with more back end, kind of like with Reebok, it was more kind of back end and percentages on the back end of the contract, and Nike was more guaranteed in a short amount of time. So then I'm thinking, all right, I'm paying more in taxes and all that type of stuff. And then, I didn't know. I made the right decision in the long term, but man, to turn down Nike felt wrong. You don't turn down Nike.
I know.
And so like I said, I look back and I'm like, we made the right decision. I don't feel like with the way CrossFit Mayhem grew and some of the stuff that we do, I feel like Nike might have been a little bit more like, hey, no, you're doing this. And so, man, you look back at those decisions and you're like, it's man, every decision you make, you don't think about it. Yeah, obviously that's a huge one, but you don't think about what it's going to look like 10 years down the road. It's crazy.
Yeah, that's well, congrats. And I mean, obviously a 10-year deal.
Same on you guys though, too.
You 100% made the right decision. And obviously given the data you had at the time, you imagine that you got Nike, you got Reebok, and then you got this random dude named Bear from Indiana talking about snatch shorts.
That's awesome. Hey man, you guys have that's what's cool about it.
No, that's too funny, man. I think for anyone that's listening, that's trying to start your own endeavor, obviously Rich has done that. I've done that. In the beginning, you got to be scrappy, particularly when you don't have resources, and a lot of time you're going to get a whole lot of no's in the beginning. Mm-hmm. Yep. But be persistent, and it, as you know, Rich, it comes full circle, and when you eventually kind of achieve some of that success, then you're having to be the one that say no, because then, the roles kind of reverse, and now people are reaching out to you for partnerships and all that. So, for those that are in the trenches on a startup or wherever you are, that it comes with the territory. Don't get discouraged, be scrappy, work your butt off. And if you hit, if doors close on you, you just keep banging on doors, and that's what you got to do. But yeah, just want to have a little fun with that one. But it's so cool to hear context though. I didn't know we were up against in real time Reebok and Nike negotiation,
I mean, you're smack dab in the middle of that. I want to say I signed the Reebok contract in June of that year. So I think you sent that email in March. Is that what it said?
It was February 5th, 2014.
So, I mean, you're talking we had to have been talking to both Reebok, Nike, and I think I was at the end of an Oakley contract or something like that.
Okay.
So it was I think I was Reebok shoes and Oakley apparel. And then it was Reebok wanted all of it and Nike wanted all of it. And so it was man, perfect storm of all of those. So there you go.
Heck yeah, man.
Well, and in the CrossFit space, you guys are arguably bigger than any of them right now. So there you go.
Yeah, we kind of, I mean, I don't want to say we fly under the radar, man, but I feel like we've been there constant the whole time. And there's been other times where I've gotten other there was Morning Chalk Up did like a little podcast, and they had some big names on the podcast, and they were talking about like the biggest brands in the space, and we didn't even get mentioned. They mentioned that. They mentioned Puma. They mentioned Rad, which had just launched like 3 months prior. So I printed that. That's actually right next to your email. It's printed. It's like, give it to me, pin it up, book it. And I will remember they said that. And I have a good relationship with Morning Chalk Up. They were facilitating a discussion. So it's not like I was F the Morning Chalk Up. But there was a few individuals on there that I'm like, yo, dude, like, how do you not, come on. We were born in here, been here 10 years. So, but it's all good, man. But this was a lot of fun, Rich. I'm glad we could finally link up.
We need to get on an elk hunt next year.
I know. Well, hey, let's connect. Let's connect on that. Cool. I know Aaron's going to be doing the BC thing again, which apparently is like one of the wildest hunts. And that was the plan to do this August. You're off the grid for like 9 or 10 days. You can only get in by plane. The nearest civilization's 300 miles away. No comms. Crazy. Like you're just out there, man. You're in bear country. And Aaron actually had his shirt eaten by a bear when he was out there this year.
Sounds terrifying.
Yes, exactly. and then we're gonna get out west, either Colorado or Utah and do some cool stuff. But we'll link up offline, man. It'd be really cool to get out there with you. Anything you want to plug for the audience, man, before we close this out?
Yeah, I mean, as much as we joked about Instagram, Rich Froning is where you're gonna see most of quick snapshots. But then our YouTube channel is just CrossFit Mayhem. I think it's CrossFit Mayhem or Mayhem Nation. I should probably know that better, but it's in there. We got some hunting stuff coming out, videos wise, and then, like I said, our push. Like I said, I want to do more for the hunting community. Of like, I want guys to not have to worry about, hey, if I go to the bottom of this hill and kill this animal, how am I going to get it out? So at no point do we ever think that. I'm like, hey, if I got to go down there, that's where we're going, and I'm gonna have to get it out. So that's kind of what we want to do. Kind of our next, obviously, Mayhem. We're always going to be in the CrossFit community, but we also want to branch out and bring kind of the hunt community into the CrossFit community. So that's where our push is. My selfish push, like here on the team, they're like, let's just keep doing CrossFit. And I'm like, yeah, but let's bring some more people in and show them how cool it is.
And it's authentic, man, because you're passionate about it, right? So
that's what I like it.
You don't even have to fake it, and you're absolutely right. There is a major fitness need doing that.
100%.
It's different than being in a tree stand somewhere.
Yeah, for sure.
And you like that. You got to carry it out. Like, so if you can't, like, it's real, that's when the real work starts.
The real work happens.
Yeah. But that's awesome, man. Makes total sense. But thanks again for coming on, Rich. I know you're a busy man. You got a lot going on, so this was fun. Don't be a stranger. If there's anything we can do to support you, don't hesitate to reach out, and hopefully we can get together on a hunt next year, or maybe even a workout at in Cookville.
Come on, man.
Sometime.
Come on anytime. Welcome anytime.
Heck yeah. All right, buddy. Well, you have a good day. Hey, go Irish, by the way. I know we probably won't make the playoffs this year, but still solid. Right. We grew up an hour from Notre Dame. My oldest brother went to Notre Dame. Dude, so yeah, we're huge Notre Dame fans.
I'm taking the kids this weekend to Clemson. So
nice. Is that home or away?
It's away. So I'm taking the kids to Clemson. My wife, good friend of hers, Hillary, never goes on girls trips. She's going on a girls trip, and I've become friends with JD Bertrand, middle linebacker.
Okay. Yeah, and he's freaking man.
The man. And so he's like, hey, I got 2 tickets. I'm like, well, I'm on dad duty. Can I get 2 more? So I'm going to take all 3 kids. So it's just going to be a little family dad weekend with the kids. So I don't think I took Trice last year to South Bend, which was incredible. And then I'm going to take Lake and Violet will be their first game. So I'm fired up. My grandpa went to Notre Dame. I'm a huge Notre Dame fan. Like you said, I don't think the playoffs happening, but hey, that was a tough stretch, 4 primetime games. They just beat up at that point.
In one play against Ohio State, man. Literally the last play of the game. But I think in the new playoff format though, they're in, right? Like if this was next year.
Man, I like Freeman. I like where he's doing. Not that I didn't like Brian Kelly. I didn't love Brian Kelly. I think Freeman's the dude. And so I just like, he's made some mistakes as a young coach, but he's going to get there, and he's young. I mean, he's 35, 36. So my age. And I like where we're moving. I like the direction. I hate the way college football is moving with all these transfers, but I feel like one transfer is okay, but when you're transferring every year, I think it's ridiculous.
100%, because it's going to end up turning into guys that, like, if they're the number 2 quarterback, they're just going to leave.
They're
and
gone,
then you're having to play to guys'
so,
egos, and then the money part is just crazy.
It's crazy, which I'm fine with them making some money and
yeah.
whatever. Like I said, I'm fine with one transfer, but I think, you know, you make 2 transfers, you got to sit out a year like you used to have to. So that's just my opinion.
Yeah. Is Bertrand, is he a big guy? Have you met him in person?
Yeah, I mean, he's bigger than me. Yeah.
Okay.
So I took Trice to the Tennessee Notre Dame baseball game, the regional last year, and sat next to his mom because his brother was pitching. And then JD and Isaiah Foskey and some of those other guys came out. And Isaiah and a couple of them came to the barn and worked out. JD had just had a knee scope, I think, so he didn't come hang out. But we've stayed in touch. And he's a bigger dude than you think. You know, like I'm 5'9". You know, like everybody thinks, oh, Richard's on steroids. I'm like, I'm 5'9" and 195 pounds. Like, chill out. You know, so.
No, that's awesome, man. Well, cool. You know, have fun at the game. We were out at the Duke Notre Dame game at Duke. Me and my brother drove down there. Cool. It's fun to watch Notre Dame games in other stadiums, just to kind of see how really been. The Notre Dame faithful, man. It's crazy. I mean, we were half the stadium at Duke. It was freaking nuts. Awesome. So yeah, it goes deep, but awesome, dude. Well, you have a good day. Thanks for coming on, and good luck with everything, bud.
Appreciate it, brother. Go Irish.
Later.